The rain fell hard on the metal streets of Delta Station. Lights from alien shops reflected in the puddles. Glowing red, green, and strange blue, the air smelled of wet wires and street food. Crowds of different species walked fast, their heads down, each busy with their own world. In the middle of all this, she moved like a shadow. A thin hood over her head, hiding her face, she kept close to the walls. Letting people pass without touching her, her steps were silent, her presence unnoticed. This was how she had survived for months, by becoming invisible. Her name was not spoken anymore. She had erased it the day she escaped the slavers. Her kind was rare and valuable. People paid high prices to own one of her species. Those who escaped were hunted without mercy. That was why she had learned to be unseen. But tonight felt different. Her body was tense, her skin prickling. It was as if the air itself was warning her. The sounds of the crowd seemed far away. Her instincts whispered one thing: someone was watching. She slipped into a narrow alley. Here the light was weak, and the smell of rust was strong. Rainwater dripped from hanging wires. Shadows moved across the walls as small machines scurried by. She stopped, listening. The sound of her own breathing filled her ears. Then, another sounds, slow, steady footsteps at the far end of the alley. A figure stood, a tall human man, dressed in a dark jacket. He had no weapon in his hands, no armor, no obvious reason to be there. Yet his eyes were locked on her, not like the cold, judging eyes of others, but as if he had found something he had been searching for. Her heart beat faster. No one ever looked at her like that. Most eyes passed over her without noticing, but his gaze held her in place. It was sharp, but not cruel, and for the first time in months, she felt seen. "Don't move," he said. His voice was calm. It carried no threat. But something else concerned. She frowned under her hood, not understanding. Her kind had never been shown concern by strangers. She didn't trust it, yet she could not look away. Her first instinct was to run. Her second was to fight. But a strange third feeling told her to wait. He took a step closer. The sound of his boots echoed in the wet alley. "You're bleeding," he said. She looked down and noticed a thin cut. Along her arm, blood dripped slowly, mixing with the rain. She hadn't even felt it. Probably from the scrap metal she had crawled over when escaping patrols. "I don't want trouble," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse from days without speaking. His brow furrowed slightly. "Too late," he replied. Before she could answer, another sound came. Heavy boots splashing through water. Multiple footsteps growing louder. Her hunters had found. Her fear gripped her chest. She stepped back, looking for another exit. But the alley was narrow and blocked by stacked crates. The only way out was past the human. She glanced at him, expecting him to step aside. Instead, he moved forward, placing himself between her and the approaching footsteps. "Come with me if you want to live," he said. The words sounded like something from an old hollow drama, but there was no joke in his voice. It was steady, sure, as if he had already decided. She hesitated for only a moment. Trusting strangers was dangerous. Trusting humans was worse. Her people's history with them was filled with betrayal. But the boots were closer now, and the shadows behind her felt like a trap closing in. For the first time in her life, she stepped toward someone instead of away. The human grabbed her hand. It was warm, firm, and strangely grounding. He pulled her into a side passage so narrow that even the light could barely enter. The smell of damp metal and oil surrounded them. The hunters' voices echoed into the alley. They went this way. One shouted. Another cursed in a language she didn't know. The human pressed her against the wall, his body shielding her from view. His hand pressed lightly over her mouth, not to hurt, but to keep her silent. She could feel his heartbeat. Against her back, it was steady, not panicked. The sound of the boots grew louder. Then passed right by. She waited, holding her breath. Only when the footsteps faded did he step back. "You're safe, for now," he said. She stared at him. Still unsure, why would a human risk himself for her? What did he want? She didn't know it yet, but this moment was the start of everything. The night she thought she was invisible till he looked straight at her. The human didn't waste a second. As soon as the footsteps faded, he gripped her wrist again and began moving. "Stay close," he whispered. His voice was low but sharp. Carrying the weight of someone used to giving orders, she didn't like being told what to do, but right now, with the hunters somewhere behind them, she had little choice. Her legs moved on instinct, following his path through the narrow service passage. Pipes dripped water from above. The metal floor vibrated faintly with the hum of engines deep inside the station. They emerged from the dark passage into the bright chaos of the central market. Here the noise was deafening voices of dozens of species bargaining. Machines whirred as vendors displayed their goods. The air was thick with the scent of spices, engine oil, and the faint ozone temps of energy weapons. He pulled her into the flow of the crowd, his tall figure cutting a path through merchants, dock workers, and travelers. Her hood stayed low, hiding her face, but she kept scanning for the hunters. She knew they would not give up easily. She had escaped them twice before, the third time. They would make sure there was no escape. "Why are you helping me?" she asked between breaths. He didn't look at her, his eyes scanning the crowd ahead. "Because you need it," he said simply. The answer made no sense. No one helped without wanting something in return, and helping her could mean prisoner. Worse for him, they passed a stall selling shimmering fabrics that shifted color with every movement. The vendor reached out to grab her arm, but the human stepped between them with a glare. One look from him, and the vendor backed away. His presence was strange, calm, but dangerous. It reminded her of a predator she had once seen on her homeworld. It did not need to roar to be feared. The crowd thinned as they reached the far side of the market. From somewhere behind, she heard shouting. The hunters had entered the market. Her heart pounded. She knew that voice. It belonged to the one who had first chained her months ago, a tall, scar-faced male from a rival species. If he caught her again, she would not survive long enough to escape a fourth time. The human seemed to sense her fear. "Faster," he said, leading her into another alley. This one was darker, lined with storage doors and flickering lights. A service bot cleaning the floor froze at the sight of them, then rolled away. They reached a locked gate at the end. He knelt quickly, pulling a small tool from his jacket. His hands worked with practiced speed. She glanced back and saw movement at the other end of the alley, shapes pushing through the crowd. "They're coming," she hissed. "I know," he muttered. With a click, the gate opened, and he pulled her inside, shutting it quietly behind them. They were now in a maintenance corridor. The air was warmer, filled with the hum of power. Lines running through the walls, dim lights lit the narrow path ahead. He moved quickly, turning left, then right, as if following a map only he knew. She finally yanked her arm free. "I can't just follow you without knowing who you are," she said. He stopped and turned to face her, for the first time. She saw his eyes clearly in the dim, light deep brown, steady, but with a shadow behind them. "My name is Kale," he said. He didn't ask for her name in return. Instead, he added, "I work on this station, and I know how to make people disappear." Her stomach tightened. "Disappear? Like kill them?" she asked cautiously. His lips twitched in the smallest hint of a smile. "No, like hide them where no one can find them," he said. "And right now, that's exactly what you need." She didn't want to trust him, but his words carried a strange weight, and more importantly, he had already saved her twice in the last half hour. "Fine," she said quietly. He nodded and started walking again. They passed through a narrow gap between two power units. The hum was so loud it almost drowned out the sound of her breathing. He stopped suddenly, raising a hand. She froze. From the shadows ahead came faint metallic clicks, the sound of boots on metal. The hunters had somehow found another route. Cale's eyes darted to a ventilation hatch nearby. "Up," he said. She looked at it and frowned. "It's too small," she said. "It's not," he replied, without giving her time to argue. He boosted her up. She crawled inside, the metal cold under her palms. He followed right after. Closing the hatch behind them, they moved through the narrow vent in silence, her heart still racing, every sound the creak of metal. The faint echo of footsteps below made her tense. Finally, they reached an opening. Cale pushed it open and dropped into a small, dimly lit room. She followed, landing lightly beside him. "This is safe," he said. Locking the hatch, she looked. Around, the room was small but clean, filled with storage crates, blankets, and a portable heater. It looked lived in. "Is this your home?" She asked. "No," he said. "It's yours now, at least until they stop looking for you." Her throat tightened. Nobody had ever given her a safe place before, and as she sat on one of the crates, she realized something. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel invisible. The small storage room was quiet, except for the low hum of the heater. She sat on one of the crates, her hood still hiding most of her face. Cale leaned against the wall near the hatch, arms crossed. He seemed calm, but his eyes were alert, scanning the room as if expecting danger even here. She hated silence. It left too much room for thoughts. And right now, her thoughts were a mess: confusion, suspicion, and a strange feeling she didn't want to name. Finally, she spoke. "Why are you doing this?" Cale didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to a small locker in the corner and opened it. He pulled out a first aid kit and set it on the crate beside her. "Because you're bleeding," he said simply. She frowned. "That's not an answer," she muttered. "It's the only one I'm giving you for now." He replied, opening the kit. He knelt beside her and gently took her arm. She flinched at the touch, but didn't pull away. His hands were steady as he cleaned the cut with a cloth. The sting made her hiss softly. "You're lucky," he said. "It's not deep." She watched him in silence, wondering why his touch didn't feel like a threat. Most hands that had touched her before were rough, cruel. His was careful. When he was done, he wrapped the wound in a clean bandage. Then he sat back. "You should rest," he said. "I don't rest," she replied. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "That's a bad habit," he said. "You'll need your strength if you want to survive." She narrowed her eyes. "You talk like you've done this before." His gaze didn't waver. "I have," he said quietly. She waited for him to explain, but he didn't. It was like he was choosing his words very carefully. Finally, she broke the silence again. "You said you work on the station," she said. "What kind of work?" He hesitated for a fraction of a second. "Security," he said. That made her tense. If he was security, he could easily turn her in for a bounty. And the bounty on her was enough to buy a small ship. Her eyes narrowed. "So why didn't you?" She asked sharply. "Because I've seen what they do to people like you." He replied. Something in his voice shifted. There was a shadow there. She could tell this wasn't just about her. It was about something he had seen. Maybe even someone he had lost. Before she could press him for more, a faint sound made them both freeze. It was the distant clank of a metal door opening somewhere beyond the hatch. Cale moved instantly, crossing the room and shutting off the heater so the hum wouldn't cover any noise. He gestured for her to stay quiet. His eyes had gone sharp again, like a predator ready to strike. Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, slow, deliberate. Not the heavy boots of the hunters. They were lighter, softer. Still, Cale's body stayed tense. He pulled a small pistol from inside his jacket, the metal dark and well-used. She realized then that while he hadn't been visibly armed earlier, he had never been unprepared. The footsteps stopped right outside the hatch. Kay's shadow fell across the thin line of light under the door. Then, silence. Her heart pounded in her ears. She could almost hear the other person breathing. Kale moved closer to the hatch, his steps soundless, in one quick motion. He unlocked it and yanked it open. A young alien boy stumbled forward, eyes wide. He couldn't have been older than 12 in human years. His skin was pale green. And he clutched a small package to his chest. Kale. The boy gasped. I found it like you said. Then he saw her and froze. The boy's gaze flicked. Between them, Kale shut the hatch and locked it again. This is Taryn, he said to her. He's someone I trust. The boy nodded quickly, still staring at her with open curiosity. She's the one they're after, isn't she? Taryn asked. Kale gave him a look that made the boy bite back further words. Instead, Taryn handed Kale the package. Inside were small metal chip-side D-data slates. Kale sifted through them and selected one. This will be yours, he said to her. It'll help you move without being scanned. She stared at him. You had a fake ID ready for me? No, he said, but I knew where to get one that made her even more uneasy. This man was not just some security officer. He had connections, skills, and a plan. But why for her? Taryn left after Kale gave him a short nod. When they were alone again, she finally asked, What are you really? Kale met her eyes. I'm someone who's been on the wrong side of the law. And the right side of the fight, he said. And right now, you're in the middle of something. Bigger than you think. Her stomach twisted. She didn't like the sound of that. What if I don't want to be in the middle of anything? She asked. He gave a humorless smile. Too late, he said. You were the moment they marked you. She looked away, her thoughts spinning. This human was hiding something dangerous. But for now, she had no choice but to follow his lead, and deep down, she feared she was starting to want to the heater stayed off. Kale didn't want any extra noise that might cover the sounds outside. The dim light from the single wall lamp made the room feel smaller. She sat on the crate, arms crossed, watching him pace. He was thinking. She could tell by the way his eyes kept narrowing, as if he was building a plan in his head. Finally, he stopped. They'll come here eventually, he said. Her chest tightened. How? She asked. They've been tracking you for weeks, he replied. People like that don't give up, especially when there's a price on your head. She hated hearing it. The bounty was the reason she couldn't stay in one place. It was why she'd learned to vanish into crowds, but now she wasn't alone. If the hunters found her here, Kale would be in danger too. She wasn't sure how she felt about that. She wasn't used to worrying about someone else. What's your plan? She asked. Kale gave a thin smile. The market is too hot now. They'll have patrols watching every exit, he said. We'll have to go through the underdeck. Her eyes widened. No one goes there, she said. That's the point. He replied, if they won't go there, it means it's the only place we can. The underdeck was a place spoken of in whispers, a maze of old tunnels and abandoned machinery deep below the station. It was home to outcasts, smugglers, and things that were neither fully human nor alien anymore. Going there was risky, but staying here was worse. Before they could move, a faint vibration reached her ears. It was subtle, but her senses were sharper than most. She stood quickly. They're here, she whispered. Kale didn't ask how. She knew. He grabbed the small bag he had prepared and slung it over his shoulder. Time to go, he said. He opened a narrow hatch at the back of the room. Behind it was a maintenance shaft just big enough to crawl through. The metal smelled of dust and machine oil. She climbed in first. Moving quickly, Kale followed. Closing the hatch behind them, they moved in silence for several minutes. The shaft twisted and dropped into darker sections. Her hands grew slick from the cold metal. When they finally emerged into a wider corridor, the air was warmer but heavier. It carried the scent of smoke and something metallic like old blood. "This way," Kale said, leading her down the corridor. The walls here were covered in peeling paint. Strange symbols had been scratched into the metal. She didn't ask what they meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to know. They passed a broken security door. Beyond it was a large open space filled with rusted cargo crates. Some moved slightly, as if something inside was alive. From the shadows, faint whispers followed them. She kept close to Kale. The underdeck wasn't just dangerous because of its layout. It was dangerous because it had its own kind of residence. Halfway through the space, a figure stepped into their path, tall, thin, wrapped in a patchwork coat. Its face was hidden by a mask made from scavenged metal. "Kale," the figure said, its voice distorted through the mask. "You're far from your level of the station." Kale didn't stop walking. "I need safe passage," he said. The masked figure tilted its head. "For both of you." Kale nodded. "That will cost you," the figure said. Kale reached into his pocket and tossed a small metal chip. The figure caught it easily, glanced at it, then stepped aside. "You have 1 hour before the others start asking questions," it said. As they passed, she whispered, "Who was that?" "Someone who doesn't care who you are as long as you pay." Kale replied she didn't like it. Every step here felt like walking on a thin rope over an endless drop. They continued deeper until the lights above flickered and died. Now only. The dim glow from Kale's handheld device lit their path ahead. The sound of dripping water echoed. Then, another sound: footsteps, but these weren't from the underdeck residents. They were heavier, faster hunters. "They found us," she breathed. Kale's jaw tightened. "They must have followed us from the market," he said. "Stay behind." "Me." The footsteps grew louder. Shadows moved on the walls. Then 3 figures stepped into view, their faces hidden under dark helmets. Energy rifles in their hands glowed faintly in the dark. "There you are," one of them said, his voice cold through the helmet speaker. Kale moved quickly, pulling her toward a side tunnel. The hunters opened fire, blue bolts of energy slamming into the walls. Sparks lit the darkness. They ran, boots pounding on the metal floor. The tunnel twisted sharply, giving them a moment of cover. Kale shoved open a half-rusted door and pushed her inside. They stumbled into another narrow shaft. Slamming the door behind them, she could hear the hunters shouting. The sound of the door being hit, Kale locked it with a steel bar. "They'll break through in a minute," she said. "Then we'll be gone in 30 seconds, he replied. Pulling open a floor panel, beneath it was a drop into blackness. She hesitated. "It's the old waste chute," Kale explained, "leads to a lower deck that connects to my hideout." She took a deep breath. Better a dark drop than being dragged. Back in chains, without another word, she jumped. Kale followed. The panel clanging shut above them just as the hunters burst in. They slid down the chute, the air rushing past. When they landed hard on the lower deck, she groaned. Kale helped her up. "Welcome to the real underdeck," he said. And the real fight, the lower deck, was darker than anywhere she had been on the station. The air was thick with the smell of damp metal and burning fuel. Somewhere in the distance, machinery groaned like an old beast struggling to breathe. The ground beneath their feet was uneven, a patchwork of rusted plates and exposed wires. Kale moved ahead with quiet confidence. He seemed to know exactly where to step and where not to. She followed, staying close. Her senses were sharp here. Every flicker of shadow, every drip of water, every faint echo sounded like danger. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "My hideout," he replied. "It's not far now, but keep your eyes open down here. You can't trust what you see." They turned into a narrow corridor. The walls were covered in old graffiti, strange alien letters mixed With crude drawings, her people's symbol was there to crossed out violently. Kay sent a shiver through her. Even here, far from the upper levels, there was hatred for her kind. As they walked, Cale glanced over his shoulder. "You're quiet," he said. She kept her eyes forward. "Just thinking." She replied, "About what?" "About how I should never have let you pull me out of that alley." Cale gave a short, dry laugh. "You might be right," he said. "But you'd already be dead or in a cage if I hadn't." They were about to reach an intersection when Cale suddenly stopped. His hand shot out in front of her. "Wait," he whispered. She froze. On the floor ahead, half hidden under debris, was a small metallic device, an energy mine. It was armed and glowing faintly. One wrong step, and the whole corridor would turn into a firestorm. "How did you see that?" she asked, her voice barely a breath. "I've been in enough traps to know when I'm walking into one," he said. He crouched, carefully disarming the mine with a small tool from his jacket. As he worked, her eyes scanned the shadows. A prickle ran down her spine. Someone was close, watching. When Cale finished, he straightened and motioned her to follow. But before they could move, a voice echoed from the darkness ahead. "Well, well. Look who's crawling around my territory." A tall figure stepped into the dim light. It was the scar-faced male who had first chained her months ago. His armor was scratched, but still deadly. Two more hunters flanked him, weapons raised. Her stomach turned cold. Cale's hand moved subtly toward his pistol. The scar-faced hunter smirked. "Drop it," he said, "or she dies before you can fire." Cale didn't drop his weapon. Instead, he stepped slightly in front of her. "You're not taking her," he said, his voice steady. The hunter laughed. "You think you can stop me? You're just one man, maybe." Cale said, "But I only need one shot." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the hunter's smile faded. He looked directly at her. "You think this human cares about you? He doesn't even know what you really are." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" she demanded. The hunter's grin returned. "Ask him about the raid on Vera Station," he said. "Ask him how many of your kind he helped capture." Her eyes shot to Cale. He didn't move, didn't deny it. Her chest tightened. "Is it true?" she asked. Cale's voice was low. "I was there," he said, "but it's not what you think." The hunter stepped forward. "Enough talking, hand her over, and maybe I'll let you walk away." Cale shook his head. "Not happening." In a blur, the hunter raised his rifle. Cale moved faster, grabbing her arm and pulling her down a side passage. Blaster fire lit the corridor. Scorching the walls, they ran, boots pounding on the metal floor. Behind them, the hunter shouted. Their footsteps close. They turned a corner, and Cale shoved her into a side door. The room beyond was small and dark, filled with old machinery. He closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. "Because you wouldn't have come with me if I had," he said bluntly. Her hands curled into fists. "So you did help capture my people." "I did," he said. "And I've been trying to make it right ever since." She wanted to hate him. She wanted to walk out and take her chances alone. But the sound of the hunters outside reminded her what would happen if she did. She was trapped by the hunters, by the station, and now by the truth about Cale. He stepped closer, his voice firm. "You can decide whether to trust me later, but right now, if you don't follow me, you won't live long enough to decide anything." Her heart pounded. She hated that he was right. She hated that part of her still believed him. Finally, she gave a sharp nod. "Fine, lead the way." Cale unlocked the other side of the room and led her into an even narrower tunnel. The air here was colder, the metal damp under their boots. "This leads to my hideout," he said. She didn't answer. All she could think about was the choice she would have to make soon, whether to keep following the man who had once been her enemy, or take her chances alone in a galaxy that wanted her gone. The tunnel narrowed until they had to walk in single file, Water dripped from pipes above, each drop echoing in the cold metal walls. Her footsteps were soft, but Kale's were steady, deliberate. She followed, even though every part of her screamed not to trust him. Finally, the tunnel ended at a thick door. Kale pressed his hand to a hidden panel, and with a low hiss, the door slid open. Warm light spilled into the narrow passage. She stepped inside and blinked in surprise. The hideout was larger than she expected. Metal walls, but clean, with shelves of supplies and a workbench stacked with tools. A small cot was tucked in one corner, and a heater glowed faintly beside it. It felt safe. That alone made her uneasy. Kale shut the door behind them, locking it with several heavy bolts. "This place isn't on any map," he said. "No patrol will find us here." She stayed near the wall, watching him move across the room. He took off his jacket, revealing a faded security vest, scratched and dented from years of use. Her eyes narrowed. "You said you were security." She said, "I was," he replied, past tense. He didn't look at her. "I quit after Vera Station." Her stomach tightened at the name. "That's where my people were taken," she said sharply. He nodded slowly. "I know." His voice was low, like the weight of the memory still pressed on him. She stepped closer, her hands curling into fists. "You were part of it," she accused. Kale didn't deny it. "I was ordered to lead a team," he said. "We were told the station was a smuggling hub, that dangerous criminals were hiding there." He finally looked at her. "What we found was nothing like that." He took a deep breath before continuing. "It wasn't smugglers, it was families, your people, living in hidden rooms, trying to survive." Her heart pounded. "So what did you do?" "I followed orders," he admitted, his voice bitter. "I led them in. And I watched as they were taken in chains." Her breath caught. The image made her chest ache with anger. "Then why save me now?" she demanded. "Because that day ruined me," he said quietly. "I left the service, burned my ID, and made a promise that I'd never let it happen again. And when I saw you in that alley, I knew I couldn't walk away." She turned away from him. The silence in the hideout felt heavier than the metal walls. His words made sense, but the wound in her heart was deep. Forgiveness wasn't something she could give in a single night. Kale moved to the workbench and picked up a small data pad. He tapped the screen, showing a map of the station. Red markers blinked in several areas. "These are the places the hunters are watching," he said. "They've locked down all main exits. Your face will be on every scanner in less than an hour." She glanced at the map. "You have a plan?" "Yes," he said. "There's a cargo ship leaving in 2 days for the Outer Rim. It doesn't check passenger lists." She frowned. "That's 2 days away. What do we do until then?" "We stay here and we stay quiet," he said. His tone was firm, but there was a trace of something else. Worry. She didn't like the idea of hiding. It felt too much like waiting for death. But before she could argue, a sharp alarm chirped from the wall panel. Kale moved fast, checking the feed. On the small screen, a grainy camera showed movement in the tunnel outside the hideout. Figures in armor, moving slowly. Scanning the walls, "They found us," she whispered. Kale shook his head. "Not yet. They're searching the lower deck," he said, "but it's only a matter of time." He turned to her, his voice urgent. "If they find this place, there's no second chance. Once they're in, it's over." Her pulse raced. "Then we run now," she said. He shook his head. "They'll expect that they'll have every path covered." Her frustration boiled over. "You're asking me to sit here while they close in?" "I'm asking you to trust me," he said sharply. Their eyes locked. Neither looked away for a long moment. Finally, she sank onto the cot, arms crossed. "Fine," she muttered. Kale turned back to the workbench, checking his pistol and loading. Spare power cells if they came through that door. He'd be ready. The hours passed slowly, every creak in the metal. Every faint hum from the station above made her tense. Cale barely moved from his post near the door. His presence was like a wall between her and the outside world. She hated that it made her feel safer by the time the station lights dimmed to night cycle. The sound outside had grown quieter. Cale glanced at her. "They moved further down," he said. "We'll use the noise from the waste recyclers in the morning to cover our move to the docks." She lay back on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Her thoughts were a storm anger at his past, gratitude for his help, fear of what waited outside, and somewhere, buried deep, was the most dangerous feeling of all hope. The hideout felt even smaller in the cold silence of the morning. Cale stood by the door, listening to the faint rumble of the waste recyclers starting up far above them. The sound was loud enough to cover footsteps and movement for a short time. This was their only chance. He turned to her. "It's now or never," he said. She pulled her hood over her head. Hiding her face again, her stomach felt tight. Not from fear she was used to fear, but from the weight of the choice she was making. She was trusting him, even after what she had learned. They moved quickly, slipping into the tunnel. Cale kept his steps quiet, but fast. The rumble of the NMU recyclers echoed through the lower deck, masking their presence. She stayed close, her eyes scanning the shadows. Every shape looked like it could hide danger. They reached an old service lift. Cale tapped the controls and the door slid open with a low hiss. Inside, the air smelled stale as the lift began to rise. She asked, "What if they're waiting at the docks?" "They will be," he said. Her brow furrowed. "Then why are we going there?" "Because I have a way past them," he replied. He didn't explain more. And she didn't push. The lift stopped at a dim corridor. They stepped out and Cale led her through narrow maintenance passages. The air grew warmer as they approached the upper levels. The hum of the station engines was replaced by the distant noise of voices. The smell of fuel told her they were near the docking bays. Cale slowed and held up a hand. They peered around the corner. The bay entrance was crawling with hunters at least 6, armed and scanning every face that passed. 2 more guarded the path to the cargo ship Cale had mentioned. Her heart sank. "There's no way through." She whispered. "There is," Cale said. Reaching into his jacket, he pulled out 2 small devices. "These will mask our signals for a short time, long enough to walk past scanners." She stared at the device he handed her. "You had these all along." "Only works once," he said. "I was saving them for the right moment." They stepped out into the open. The crowd in the docking bay was thick. Merchants, travelers, and workers moved between ships. The hunters scanned faces one by one. Her heart pounded as they approached. Every step felt like walking toward a trap. One of the hunters looked up, its helmet visor glinting under the bay lights. He stepped toward them. Cale kept walking, his face calm. The hunter's scanner passed over them beeped once, then went silent. The masking device worked. They kept moving, their pace steady. They were almost to the cargo ship when a voice shouted, "There! That's them!" She spun, the scar-faced hunter was pushing through the crowd, weapon already in hand. Cale grabbed her arm. "Run!" They bolted, weaving through startled travelers. The hunter shouted, weapons firing. Blue energy bolts cut through the air, scorching the ground near their feet. The cargo ship's ramp was lowering slowly. "Faster," Cale urged. She ran harder, her lungs burning. 2 hunters moved to block the ramp. Cale drew his pistol and fired twice. 1 bolt hit the wall. The other forced them to dive for cover. They reached the ramp just as the scar-faced hunter lunged forward. Cale turned, putting himself between her and the hunter. "You're not taking her," Cale said. The hunter laughed coldly. "You think she's worth dying for?" Cale's voice was firm. "I know she is." The hunter raised his weapon. Cale fired first. The bolt hit the hunter in the chest, sending him sprawling, but in the same instant, A shot from another hunter struck Cale's side. He stumbled, his pistol clattering to the ground. "Cale!" She shouted, grabbing his arm. Blood was already spreading through his vest. He pushed her toward the ramp. "Go!" He gritted out, "I'm not leaving you." She yelled. He met her eyes. "If you stay, we both die." Tears burned her eyes. She had spent her whole life running, hiding. But this was the first time someone had fought for her without wanting anything in return. The ship's engines roared to life. The ramp was starting to close. She grabbed Cale's arm and pulled with all her strength. He staggered but moved with her. They stumbled inside just as the ramp sealed shut. The cargo ship lifted from the docking bay. The sound of weapons faded as the station fell away beneath them. Cale collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. She tore open a medkit and pressed a bandage to his wound. "You're going to be fine," she said, her voice shaking. He gave a faint smile. "Told you I wouldn't let them take you." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence. She looked at him, this human who had once been her enemy. The man who had become the only person in the galaxy to truly see her. Her voice was soft but certain. "Wherever we're going." "I'm not hiding anymore." Cale's eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Good," he said. "Because neither am I." The ship carried them into the unknown, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid.